Hey boys and girls, I'm about to continue Old Wolf by Avi. Such a good book. We're on chapter 37 and Casey had just celebrated his birthday and he got a bow and arrow and he's very anxious to use it. His dad promised him that he would for his birthday today, but then his dad got called out of town. So now Casey's by himself. Mom just went to work. What might happen because he's so excited he doesn't want to wait to practice his bow and arrow. So we'll see. Chapter 37. Shielding his eyes against the glare of the melting snow, Casey watched his mother drive out of the garage and go carefully down the dirt road. When he lifted a hand to wave goodbye, she gave 2 beeps of her horn. The next moment she was out of sight. Casey stooped over, grabbed 2 fistfuls of snow, squeezed them into a ball, and threw it at nothing in particular. Then he returned to the house, leaving the garage door open for his mother's return. Inside, he turned back to Bow Hunter, only to tell himself he did not have to play a game. He could use his real bow. It was right there by the side of his bed. Casey picked it up and admired the fine wood again, its lovely curves, its sweet balance. Smiling, he recalled what he had read in the book, how powerful a bow and arrow could be, how powerful he could be. He took up his bowstringer, a long, thick cord with leather pockets at either end. As he had practiced with his dad, he looped the larger leather pocket over one bow tip and then fitted the second pocket on the other end. Holding the bow in the middle with his left hand, putting his foot down on the bowstringer, he pulled up. The action bent the bow enough for him to use his free hand to fit the bowstring itself on the 2 bow tips. Once he had checked that the string was properly attached, he lowered the bow. The bowstringer slipped off, but the real bowstring remained taut and strong. He plucked it. It made a lovely twang. The bow was ready. He was ready. He knocked an arrow on the string. He was about to give a pull when the words about safety his parents had spoken came into his head. He needed to go outside. Bow in one hand, arrows in the other, Casey stood in front of his house and tried to recall all the 9 steps he was supposed to take for every shot. Impatient to try, he could remember only 3 of the steps. 1, take the proper stance. 2, knock the arrow. 7, aim. What would he shoot at? He looked around. He decided that the garage would be the best target. It was big and the door was open. He would shoot an arrow inside so he would be able to find it. He selected one, dropping the others to the ground. After knocking his arrow, Casey took a wide stance, pulled back the arrow and string, used his right eye to aim, and released the arrow. Twang! Instead of going straight, the arrow flew wildly high, hit the garage roof at an angle, careened off and kept going, disappearing among the trees beyond. Casey stood stock still, astonished that the shot had gone so crazily. His parents would be upset if he lost that arrow. He was upset. Not wanting to lose the arrow, he set off through the snow in the direction he was sure the arrow had flown, toward the trees. In one hand he clutched the bow, in the other he held the remaining arrows. Chapter 38. We're going to go back to the wolves. Nishaba awoke, uncertain where he was. His whole body ached. He was terribly stiff. His paw and shoulder hurt. The urine stench was strong. He realized with dismay, lying in his own puddle. He looked about with bleary eyes, but the surroundings seemed unfamiliar. Where was Tanagan? The pups, the other wolves. Only gradually did he recall all that had happened. Where was the raven? Would she come back? He worried that she was insulted. He should not have argued with her. Yes, a raven was an unusual friend for a wolf, but she was a friend nonetheless. Now she was the only one he had. She at least was helping him. He shut his eyes and dozed. He dreamed he was young and running through the forest, Tanagan by his side. The pups were scrambling to keep up. The other wolves in the pack trotted behind him, tails wagging. Then the dream changed, and the pups were mouthing his muzzle, the young begging for life. Ka! Nishaba blinked his eyes open to see Merla holding a dead mouse in her beak. She hopped forward. "How old is that?" Nishaba asked. The raven dropped the shriveled carcass. "What difference does it make? It's food, and it's younger than you are." Using her beak, she pushed the dead mouse closer to the wolf. He sniffed, hesitant. "It'll keep you alive," the raven coaxed. Nishaba braced himself, then, nauseating as it was, ate the mouse. "I told them to leave me Do you think," asked Merla, "any of your pack will return for you?" "I told them to leave me alone." Merla cocked her head. "Do you want to know another raven saying?" "No." "Ka! The bigger that you think you are, the smaller you are." "You tire me," said the wolf. "Actually," said Merla, "I'm saving you. Let me see what else I can find." She flew off. Nishaba, feeling great urgency to get away, to get back to his pack, once again tried to move, but failed. He wondered if he would ever move again, if he would spend the rest of his life, a shortened life surely, listening to the raven tell him what an old and useless creature he was. Chapter 39. Casey could not find the arrow. He looked back, trying to retrace his mind the path the arrow had taken from the garage roof. Retrace in his mind the path the arrow had taken from the garage roof. He tried to think it through like a geometry problem. What was the angle of its flight, its vectors? He looked up. The sky was clouding over. The air was warmer and smelled of rain. He marveled at how changeable spring weather could be. He walked to the right and then to the left, recalling that expression he had heard, finding a needle in a haystack. In this case, it was a white arrow in a melting snowfield. The Seatons' open land extended some 30 yards beyond their house. After that stood trees marking the boundaries to the national forest. It went on for miles, reaching into higher country. Casey saw that there was less snow on the ground under the trees than where he stood in the open. Was it possible that the arrow went that far? He scolded himself. "I never should have shot that arrow. Where was I wrong? My grip, my fingers? I didn't hold the arrow the way the book said I should." He listened intently as if he might hear where the arrow had landed. "Caw!" Was that a crow? A raven? Casey scanned the walls of trees. At first he saw nothing. Only after a few moments of searching did he spot something big and black high in a lodge pine. He thought it was just a shadow. It took him a few moments to see that it was a bird sitting on a branch, and the bird seemed to be looking right at him. A raven. A raven, Casey figured from the size of it. Smart birds, he told himself. The sight of the raven reminded him of Bowhunter. Moving slowly so as not to startle the bird, Casey put his arrows on the ground, picked out one of the 5, and knocked it on the string. He hefted the bow, took a stance, recalling the right way to hold the arrow in the string this time, and aimed it at the bird. With a loud caw, the raven leaped into the air, swerved about, and flew deeper into the forest. Casey lowered his bow. "So like my game," he thought. Feeling challenged, he bent over, picked up his arrows, and began to follow the raven, now his target. So this is where the two plots totally collided. Tune in next time. Great to see you guys, Osage. Bye.